I was discovered by Julie Black. That and you know, I was really just a little girl. I hadn't really found myself yet, and I felt like I really found myself through this character. And as I evolved, the character evolved, and as the character evolved, sometimes way beyond where I was in my life, she grew me up in a lot of ways, and showed me what a strong woman looks like, and Julie Plett showed me what a strong woman looks like, and I wanted to.
Look, I'm at my wedding.
Should we have a toast? Yeah. You know, I wanted that to be a part of the character. I wanted to play a strong woman. So that's how I feel like she's really evolved, and you know, throughout the seasons, and her story, and her loss, and her gains, all that good stuff.
Yeah, baby.
Nice.
I have nothing to add. No.
So, I know not all fandoms are created equally, but I've observed a few of them throughout my life and have witnessed enough toxicity to know that they just aren't for me. So I don't know if I would say I'm a part of the Vampire Diaries fandom. Even if I was, I wouldn't have been for long because a lot of TVD fans can be extremely annoying. The Vampire Diaries was an insanely popular show during its peak and still has a growing fandom due to the show now being on HBO Max and whatnot. People are still talking about this show to this day, despite it ending almost 10 years ago. Let that sink in. There are a lot of people who love this show, and so it makes sense that it will be kind of toxic. Most fandoms that are really big tend to be for understandable reasons. A lot of people means a lot of different opinions and perspectives and interpretations. The thing about the TVD fandom, though, is that there is a lot of blatant racism and misogyny that channels a lot of, stupid perspectives that some of these people have on the series. I'm always complaining about the Damon and Elena sector of the fandom, not because I think all Elena fans are like this, but because a lot of them are some of the most annoying people in the world and are constantly misinterpreting things that happen in the show to fit whatever argument they're trying to make about why Delena is perfect and amazing and why such and such character is terrible. I'm not saying Stelena fans or Stefan fans are also annoying, and I don't doubt that many of them could be racist as well, but like, Delena fans can be a special kind of terrible. And again, I'm not saying all Delena fans. Many D/Damon fans are sensible, reasonable people who just enjoy watching Ian Somerhalder and the drama of their relationship and don't actually think that Damon is an actual victim, or that his relationship with Elena is aspirational in the way the show clearly wants us to. But the ones who do think that are the ones I can't stand because their love for Delena and Damon in particular colors a lot of their opinions about other things that happen in the show. And those opinions and hot takes are just really bad. I've already discussed this in my video about Catherine Pierce, but the way Damon fans blame Catherine for everything wrong in Damon's life and the way the writers of the show do showcases the internalized misogyny that is extremely pervasive in that community. Because most DE fans are women, I'm sure. And at the time of the airing of the show, I could have given them a pass for being really young. Young girls tend to like bad boy characters, which is fine. But the fact that current DE fans still hold on to these ideas is very weird. Because a lot of them will defend Damon in a way that is kind of ridiculous. Like, I love Stefan, but I will critique him when necessary, which is something some Damon fans are incapable of doing. As I went over in my first video about TVD, which was about how Delena ruined the show, I pointed to a storyline in season 6 where Bonnie, a witch, puts Damon through the pain she experienced when she was trapped in the prison world with Kai, after he selfishly ambushed her with him after she already told him she didn't want to see him because he terrorized her. I showed a clip from the AfterBuzz podcast that covered the show for years, where two of the hosts who were white didn't seem to understand why Bonnie was in the right for doing what she did.
Said to Damon, she's like, I wish I could show you and make you understand how it felt to be left alone.
Yeah, well, I had a little bit of a problem with that scene. No matter how much pain you as an individual have ever been through, you never should want to inflict that kind of pain on somebody you love. And yes, he inflicted pain on her tonight by bringing Kai back, but he wasn't doing it because he wanted to. He was doing it because he was being forced to, kind of. Like, I'm about to put you in pain so you know how I felt. That's messed up.
I don't agree with that either. I don't think she should have shown him physically what it felt like.
I don't know. I kind of feel like in a way, she had a right to do what she did to Damon, just because no one's ever going to know how she feels and understand why she doesn't want to hear from Kai unless they can put themselves in her shoes. And Damon is so focused on wanting answers about his mom that he really didn't think it through, and he kind of put their friendship test to the line tonight by you know, she said, I don't want to see him. I don't want to even hear his name again. And then you brought him to her. That is like, if you're my friend, you don't do that when I say I don't want to do that.
Both of them weren't DE fans, but one of the ones who was had a pattern of constantly defending and taking up for Damon, even when he was clearly in the wrong for something. And while people are entitled to their own opinion, sometimes what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, and this situation was very clearly wrong, and Bonnie was absolutely right for reacting the way she did. But that's one of my biggest gripes with TVD fans in general. Their lack of empathy towards Bonnie is disturbing. Not just because it is usually racially charged, but because it's an attitude that is essentially endorsed by the writers. Many of the fans end up emulating the twisted and unfair narrative that consumes the series. TVD is not just a TV show. It acts as a tragically perfect exemplification of the horrendous ways POC characters are handled in shows that clearly don't want them there. Even though I've done 4 videos about this show so far, I will offer a small bit of context just in case some of you haven't seen it. The show, set in the fictional town of Mystic Falls, Virginia, mostly centers around Elena Gilbert, our lead teenage female protagonist, who we learned in the pilot has just survived a fatal car accident which took both of her parents. She now lives with her young aunt Jenna and her younger brother Jeremy, who hasn't been doing well since the death of his parents. After meeting the new student named Stefan Salvatore, Elena ends up getting caught in the middle between 2 vampire brothers. The 2 become infatuated with her due to her connection to the woman who turned them in 1864 named Catherine Pierce, who we learn is Elena's doppelganger. Alongside them are Elena's 2 childhood best friends, Caroline Forbes, Bonnie Bennett, her ex-boyfriend Matt Donovan, his older sister Vicky Donovan, and his toxic BFF, Tyler Lockwood. Throughout the series, we watch Elena and her loved ones getting way too involved in the Salvatore's vampire bullshit when Caroline has a brief abusive relationship with Damon and is later turned into a vampire by Catherine. Their best friend Bonnie is revealed to be a witch who descends from a lineage of powerful witches such as Emily Bennett, who was Catherine's handmaiden, aka slave. Tyler Lockwood is revealed to be a werewolf after learning the men in his family are cursed with the werewolf gene, and the only way to trigger it is to kill a human being. And within the first 5 episodes, we learn about a secret council that is aware of the existence of vampires and tries to keep a hand on the public's awareness of them, when Damon begins murdering civilians by ripping their necks open. One of the most important aspects of the series, despite what some male fans of the show deeply want to deny, is the romantic relationships. I think the show did a decent job of mixing in the interpersonal relationship drama with the supernatural happenings, as with Buffy. That's not to say the writing around the romantic relationships was always good, it's just that there was a good balance, in my opinion. Allegedly, in my opinion. In the beginning, the familial and platonic relationships are also just as important. One of the secret council members is also Caroline's mom, who is also the sheriff, and the 2 have a tense relationship due to Caroline's understandable resentment towards her mom, who doesn't truly understand her as a person, doesn't always take her seriously, and works too much. Matt and his sister Vicky are left to fend for themselves when their mom abandons them, but when Vicky is attacked numerous times by Damon and is killed after being turned into a vampire, Matt is left to take care of himself until his mom finally decides to return during the latter half of season 1, and you start to see the ways Matt has been parentified and why he's always so pissed off. Tyler's father is the mayor, and he and Tyler's mom are also on the secret council, but his dad is shown to have a temper and is physically abusive towards Tyler. Aside from the familial relationships, there's also the friendship between Caroline, Elena, and Bonnie. All of these relationships help establish why these characters are the way they are. It shows their complexity. When we first meet Tyler, he sexually assaults Vicky, his girlfriend, in the woods, and he tries forcing himself on her, and we see how much of an absolute dick he is towards her. He also gets into numerous fights with Jeremy, who is in love with Vicky and doesn't like the way Tyler treats her. But then we meet his dad and we learn where he got that aggression from. Caroline comes off as obnoxious and extremely self-centered in the beginning, but we eventually see that she is genuinely kind at heart, but struggles with a lot of insecurities and doesn't always feel loved by the people around her. Not to mention, of course, the second most important relationship in the series, the complicated and fraught relationship between Damon and Stefan. Even though the show is centered around her, Elena's backstory and her relationships with her family and friends doesn't add to her complexity because Elena is not complex. She is not a well-written character. Caroline is jealous of her because she feels Elena is always the first choice when it comes to men. Now she has to try so much harder than her to get men to like her. There's kind of a Madonna horror complex thing happening with the 2 best friends, and this is what prevents Elena from being interesting as a person, and why Caroline has much more depth than she does. Caroline is able to be a little unlikable, but still kind of lovable and relatable. At least for the first few seasons. But Elena can only really be perfect. We're always meant to side with her even when we shouldn't. But we do at least have some understanding of why Elena made certain questionable decisions in season 1 when it comes to Jeremy. As much as it's fucked up to ask some random vampire whom you know is kind of evil to erase your brother's memories of seeing his girlfriend getting killed, you can empathize with the fact that a young Elena who was still traumatized from losing her parents felt she had no other choice and just wanted to spare her young brother another grieving period. When it comes to Bonnie, we aren't given much to understand why she does anything. We meet her grams and we hear about her dad, yes, but we never meet or see him until season 4, and even then, we don't learn that much about him or his relationship with Bonnie. We don't learn a ton about her backstory, we don't learn anything that would explain why she makes certain decisions or why she constantly puts Elena's safety, well-being, and happiness above her own. She is not able to have any complexity because her character is simplified down to serving one purpose. So as I usually do in preparation for a new TBD video, I go to the TBD subreddit to see what fans have to say about certain characters. I was not surprised to see that Bonnie seems to have an equal amount of supporters as she does haters because, well, the character of Bonnie has always been on the receiving end of very blatantly racist and misogynistic criticism from the fandom. What I was surprised by was that many of these hot takes that were quite recent are some of the weirdest and stupidest takes I have ever heard. In my Catherine video, there was a section where I talked about the weird ways fans discuss her character and how she is often hated for doing things that other characters in the show have also done. I read a comment from someone on Reddit who smartly pointed out that part of the reason for that is because most of the bad things Catherine did was to the main cast. And when it comes to Bonnie, most of the hatred comes from certain viewers struggling to empathize with both Bonnie and the other core cast members when Bonnie is rightfully and justifiably resentful towards them. For example, one post from 2 years ago titled, "Why do people like Bonnie so much?" reads, "Genuinely curious. I don't particularly like her character, and partially because of the way she was written, but also I think she's a hypocrite. Especially in season 1 when she would tell Elena not to drag her into vampire BS, but get pissed when Elena would leave her out. Or when Caroline turned into a vampire and she completely left her in the dust. Don't get me wrong, if my grandma had died and every vamp I had known was evil, I might hate vamps too. But to leave your best friend you've known forever behind at her lowest? Cruel. She constantly denied helping until she finally just had to help, which if we just skipped that, we would have been miles ahead by now. Look, I understand liking her. I don't particularly, and this isn't an attack. What I don't get is why people act like she's an innocent angel that has done no wrong and made no bad decisions. I personally think it's the fandom that makes me not like her so much because they shovel her into your mouth and tell you to like her, and if you don't, then you're a bad person. I want to hear people's opinions, so feel free to comment. This is just my opinion. So for one, criticizing a character for being a hypocrite in the Vampire Diaries universe is silly on its own. If we're going to hate characters for being hypocrites, then Bonnie would not be the character you stop at. 2, I don't remember Bonnie complaining that much to Elena about being brought into vampire bullshit. She did sometimes, but she was always willing to help her friends. 3, Bonnie left Caroline in the dust? No, she didn't. For those who don't know, Caroline ended up in the hospital at the end of season 1 when she, Tyler, and Matt were in his car, and Tyler crashed the car and she fainted afterward. At the start of season 2, we learned from her mom, Liz, that Caroline was literally about to die, and so Damon suggests giving her some vamp blood to Elena to heal her. And Bonnie encourages him to do it since she knew he would do it anyway for Elena. Put a pin in that. What the gang didn't know was that Catherine would show up later that night after everyone had already left and suffocate her with a pillow. Due to Damon's blood being in her system, we watch Caroline transition into a vampire in the second episode of season 2, Brave New World. After feeding on one of the nurses, she escapes the hospital and attends the school carnival where all her friends are. Like most new vampires, Caroline struggles to control her bloodlust and ends up feeding on and killing this guy that we saw Bonnie flirting with earlier. When Bonnie sees this, she is horrified and deeply disturbed by what her best friend just did because, of course she was. So this naturally made Bonnie a little uncomfortable. This person saying she left Caroline in the dust as if Bonnie's reaction should have been to empathize more with her than the person who was killed is just weird. I would also be a little disturbed if I saw that my best friend killed someone. Some of these people were really saying that because Bonnie only knew him for a few hours means she should just not give a fuck that his life was taken. Y'all are not okay. Just because we're used to human life being disregarded on this show by most of the characters doesn't mean it's unreasonable or cruel to be uncomfortable with a murderer. Yes, Caroline didn't choose this, so we can empathize with her too, but acting like other characters are just supposed to be okay with everything these vampires do because Elena is really unfair. Thankfully, many people in the comments of this Reddit post came to Bonnie's defense, with one person saying, "I personally like it when Bonnie has her bratty moments. I wish she had more of them, to be honest, especially in season 1. I thought the arc with Caroline had the potential to be interesting. She doesn't really leave Care in the dust. She avoids her and she's awkward around her, but she still makes her a daylight ring immediately after she turned. She doesn't refuse to help her, she just kind of avoids her. Caroline did kill another human being, and even though the audience can see that it was the extreme hunger of a new vampire, seeing that one of your best friends murdered another human, blood still on their face, would be horrifying. It would be difficult to think this undead monster and your childhood friend were the same person. On a better show, they would have had her come around to Caroline's vampirism on screen, since we see they have made up by the sleepover episode. Maybe connect her avoidance of Caroline with her guilt from being involved with the transformation. Have her and Caroline have an actual conversation, which would help Bonnie grow and start learning to accept vampires. Now, the whole thing about Bonnie learning to accept vampires is something I'm gonna get more into later, so put a pin in that also. But I do agree that it's weird the show doesn't follow up with this storyline. There's not a moment where Bonnie and her make up or Caroline expresses great remorse for what happened. Going back to the comment I just read, they also add, "There's also the fact that the narrative doesn't serve her the way it serves the other characters. Other characters get to come to terms with personal biases, though not often because this isn't an introspective show. Caroline has a talk with Alaric after he killed her dad. Stefan talks to Caroline about how they're all similar to Klaus since they've all killed people. They get to have some introspection and soul searching. Bonnie doesn't get the opportunity to self-reflect or have her own internal conflict. Hence why we don't get to see her self-reflect when it comes to her reactions to Caroline's transformation, and that does a disservice to her. We know she accepts her eventually. We know she must have that moment, but we don't see it. And some people see this as a failing of the character rather than a failure of the writers. We don't see her grieve, so there's less opportunities to empathize. We don't see her develop a decent romance, so there's less opportunities to fantasize. She does a spell and then she's shoved off screen. The fans that love her will fill in these gaps themselves. Others will take it at face value. But that's a whole other can of worms. This is what I was talking about with Julie Plex syndrome in my This Is Us video. People get more mad at Bonnie as if she is a real person and not the writers for writing her so weirdly. Instead, they take what they see, like this commenter said, at face value and don't consider that maybe it's the writers who deserve this criticism. This is the fault of bad writing and the writers not caring enough about Bonnie to do more with that whole conflict between her and Caroline. In several other dumb Reddit posts from 1 to 3 years ago, some declared that Bonnie was the worst and that her holier-than-thou attitude is worse than they remembered. Another saying she was the most insufferable hypocrite and boldly state that she told Damon to give Caroline blood only to get mad at him about it later. Another saying she was annoying because she caused the problems she would later complain about and blame others for, and one really idiotic post that tried to say Bonnie was the cause of everyone's misfortune. That's almost as stupid as in the 100th episode when the characters tried to blame Catherine for everyone's misfortune, as if Damon Salvatore, famous life ruiner, wasn't sitting right there. And as if Caroline didn't just fuck Klaus in that same episode. You know Klaus, the man who murdered Aunt Jenna and Tyler's mom? Do you see what I mean by how stupid these takes are? Like a sore lack of media literacy and the ability to interpret anything. You don't have to like the bitch, but to say she is the cause of everyone's misfortune is crazy when she is the reason all of those bitches are still alive. Unfortunately, these other posts had more Bonnie haters in the comments who are agreeing with these incredibly stupid posts. First thing to unpack is this take that Bonnie is the reason Caroline became a vampire. No, she's not. For one, she did not tell Damon to give her vampire blood. Damon is the one who made the suggestion at first. It's only when Elena objected to it that Bonnie said he should do it. Plus, Damon was already going to do it for Elena like Bonnie said. Second, these characters are always being fed vampire blood in order for them to heal from fatal wounds. Caroline is their best friend, of course they weren't just gonna let her die. Bonnie had no idea that someone was going to go into the hospital and murder her. Catherine is the reason that Caroline is a vampire because she is the one who killed her. She knew she had vamp blood in her system because by then she'd been impersonating Elena throughout the entire episode. The reason Bonnie got angry at Damon is because Damon is a piece of shit who not only abused Caroline but also tried to kill her. Well, both of them.
Bonnie, it wasn't his fault. Everything that happens is his fault, Elena.
She is correct. Most of the bad things that have happened are because of Damon. If this was Elena saying these things and tried to kill Damon for the same reasons, these people would not be mad at Elena. Some probably would, but only Elena is allowed to be justifiably angry at Damon in the eyes of the writers and many of the fans. Third, a few of these posts complain about Bonnie being the reason all of that happened because she pretended to dispel the Gilbert device at the end of season 1. Okay, I'm gonna need to provide a bit of extra context so that I can make my point here, so just bear with me, please. In the middle of season 1, we learned that Catherine, along with a bunch of other vampires, were all rounded up and thrown in a church to burn after the council learned they were in town in 1864. Except, they weren't actually burned because Damon had Emily Bennett spell the church, which locked them into a magical tomb under the church, where they just mummified over time. They would need blood in order to be revived. The council did not know this. Catherine was also not in the tomb like Damon thought for over a century. A girl named Anna, who had befriended Jeremy, was a vampire whose mom was best friends with Catherine and was thrown in the tomb after she got caught in 1864. After a whole series of events leads to them finding a spell book which helps them find the location of the tomb, Stefan, Damon, Elena, Bonnie, and our Grams prepare to open it. Anna uses this as an opportunity to sneak in and grab her mother. After Damon realizes Catherine isn't there, he throws the blood bag he got for Catherine at the wall before leaving upset and heartbroken.
She's not here. What? She's not here!
Since he did that, he practically gave the vampires a nice little snack which revived them and ultimately freed them from the tomb that was supposed to remain sealed after they closed the door. Put a pin in that too. And because these vampires were killed by the council, many of them are hell-bent on getting revenge on the town. Around this part of the season, Elena learns to her utter and complete shock that she was adopted. Her real mom, named Isabel, was married to her history teacher Alaric before being murdered by Damon, or so he thought. He eventually learns from Damon that he actually turned her into a vampire, but at this point we still don't know for sure where she is. During the last 7 episodes, we meet Jeremy and Elena's Uncle John, who pretty much everyone hates because he's an asshole. He is also on the secret council and dons a special Gilbert ring that prevents him from dying by the hand of a supernatural being. The same ring Alaric's wife Isabel gifted to him when they were together. I know this is a lot, but this is important, I promise. In a separate storyline, Anna and her mom Pearl try to settle into their new lives with the other tomb vamps. Uncle John tries to get friendly with her when he thinks she is in possession of some kind of device he needs, but we don't know what it does exactly and no one else but the council does either. Pearl ends up giving it to Damon, which John finds out about and is very angry since he just got on Damon's hit list a couple episodes before during a party. A few episodes later, it's revealed that Elena's Uncle John, who I should mention hates vampires, is her real father. When Isabel finally shows up in Mystic Falls, she tells Elena she needs to get Damon to give her that device. Elena asks Bonnie if she can figure out what it actually does, and they learn that the device is a weapon against vampires. When Isabel kidnaps Jeremy to get Elena to get Damon to give her the device, they ask Bonnie to dispel it before making the trade. And she does, or she pretends to, and vaguely explains this to Caroline in the cliffhanger of the penultimate episode.
I did something bad, Caroline. And I lied about it. To who? To Elena. I pretended to do something I didn't really do. I couldn't do what she wanted me to do. It wasn't right. Grams would have never done it, so I couldn't either.
Bonnie explains that her Grams, who once warned her about vampires and expressed her deep distrust of them, wouldn't have dispelled that device, and Bonnie couldn't just let hundreds and hundreds of people die because some bitter tomb vamps woke up pissed off. So this was a good thing. The only reason Elena wanted it dispelled is so the vampires she cared about wouldn't die, which is fine, but like, those other vampires were trying to seek cruel revenge on a bunch of innocent people, many of whom didn't even know vampires existed. Plus, the whole reason the council was looking for this device and devised this whole plan to set it off during the Mystic Falls parade, whatever the fuck, is because of Damon. When Damon arrived in town, he was going on a killing spree, which is what alerted the council that the vampires had come back, which in turn made them come up with a plan to get rid of them because they were killing innocent people every fucking day. I understand we're supposed to look at the council as villains in some ways, but they aren't. I mean, I don't agree with all of their tactics, to be clear, and this is coming from someone who doesn't fuck with cops. Vampires in this show treat most human beings as disposable, and it causes some fans to forget that they are actually the villains. They're killing innocent people. It doesn't matter that we don't want them to die. It doesn't matter that some new vamp can't control themselves. If this was happening in real life, you would be on the side of the council and of Bonnie. It is also Damon's fault that the tomb vamps got out. It's possible Anna could have gotten them out had they never met, but Finding the tomb and trying to get it open was why Damon came back to Mystic Falls in the first fucking place. They needed a wish to open the tomb, and Bonnie had to convince her Gramps to do it because they hoped if Damon got Catherine, he would leave town and let everyone live happily ever after. So Bonnie also probably felt weird about helping them due to her own guilt over what happened to Gramps. Because the seal was supposed to come back down, and it didn't. And the tomb dams got out anyway, which means, as Bonnie tells Elena a few episodes afterward, that Gramps practically died for nothing. Yes, Bonnie did kind of force her Gramps' hand, but Bonnie also did that because she felt bad about leaving Stefan in there. Stefan, who at this point was always kind to her, unlike Damon. Also, Bonnie wouldn't be in this mess if it wasn't for Elena or any of them. Elena is the one who convinced Bonnie to do the spell, and Bonnie loves Elena. That's her best friend, and to the point I made earlier, she cares more about her happiness than she does her own. So to put the blame all on Bonnie as if people wouldn't have also been mad if she said no is again very unfair. No nuance can be offered to Bonnie by people who say stuff like this. When it comes to Elena, people are always willing to give her a pass when she does hypocritical things like asking Damon to erase her brother's memories. Twice. Knowing how fucked up that is, and that if someone did that to her, someone other than Damon I suppose, she would be livid. We can empathize with Caroline, who just brutally murdered someone because she just lost control. We can empathize with Damon, a serial murderer and sexual predator, because of his poor broken heart. But we can't empathize with Bonnie, who was always under so much pressure to do what her friends are asking her to do. Bonnie's choices are meant to exist in a vacuum, and she is expected to make perfect choices, otherwise she's being a hypocrite who is somehow to blame for everyone's problems. These people are holding Bonnie to a standard they aren't holding anyone else to. Some of the comments who agreed say they only started to like Bonnie in later seasons when she and Damon began to develop a stronger friendship. So we only like Bonnie later on because she starts being, I guess, nicer to characters we care more about, as if Damon deserves her kindness in any way. To reiterate, sometimes your opinions on female characters can reveal something about you. And there's just something about these criticisms that are so incredibly odd, but are common when it comes to female characters who are outspoken and aren't willing to put on a nice performance towards people who are assholes. Like, some people actually think Joanna from the original Stepford Wives is an annoying bitch because she complained too much, when if you watch the movie, the things she's complaining about are totally valid. There are just certain female characters who aren't able to be assertive and outspoken and rightfully angry without experiencing such disdain from audiences, especially male audiences. For example, this comment, which was under a post calling Bonnie insufferable. Thank God, finally someone said it out loud. I know later she had development, but she was very stubborn and did whatever the hell she pleases. Before her fans start saying she died the most and suffered, but it was mostly her choice to do so. Remember when she brought back Jeremy, knew that she'll die? And in season 5, when she was the anchor, she never told anyone that she'll die? In season 6, when Bonnie left Kai in prison world again, that too with heretics this time, after he tried to make things right? Yeah, what happened with Gramps and Enjo was really sad. Also gonna add how differently Bonnie treated Caroline, though sometimes she deserved it, lol. Bonnie always tried to be the right, high moral being by doing what she thinks is correct, and it never works out. In fact, she creates problem for herself, but her egoistic self can't accept it. Good fucking lord. The English language doesn't always make sense to me either, and I definitely struggle with articulating myself sometimes, but god damn. Proofread your comments before pressing send. So first of all, someone finally said it. It is not unpopular to dislike Bonnie. The only reason it feels like it is now is because the voice of people who are always defensive of Bonnie are getting more amplified. Second of all, Bonnie sacrificing her life for Jeremy and not telling her friends she was dead was just Bonnie doing what she always does, which is look out for everyone else but herself. Bonnie wanted Elena to have her brother because she had already lost both of her parents and her Aunt Jenna, and didn't want her to then have to grieve the loss of her best friend. It's weird to look at that storyline and read it as something evil Bonnie did when she was in fact doing something incredibly selfless, whether I agree with her doing that or not. Like, what a crazy thing to be mad at Bonnie for. Third of all, expecting Bonnie to be cool with Kai after he tortured, almost killed, and left her for dead because he had a sudden change in personality and wanted to apologize is so absurd that it feels like a joke. Because Kai changes back to his old self on a dime and murders his pregnant sister in the finale. Like, what are you talking about? I find it interesting how often these people say Bonnie is holier than thou, or that she acts like she is morally superior, when for one, all of these characters act like that, and two, she absolutely does not act morally superior. Bonnie just has moments where she is very confident in her magical abilities and stands up for herself when people are trying to force her to do shit that might kill her. This confidence is usually sullied by the fact that she almost always ends up doing what they want her to do anyway. But this confidence in her not being fooled by Damon's charm in the way Elena is seems to be a part of these weird critiques of her being holier than thou. Sorry, but Bonnie is better than most of these people because she actually does care about the well-being of others. Other people who don't care about her does value human life and has principles. Someone on the Bonnie is annoying post said, "So annoying. But if she was dead, all your faves would be dead in season 1. The nitpicking when it comes to her in this fandom is hilarious because she's not allowed to criticize, but she's criticized. She's not allowed to hate vampires, but vampires ruined her life. If she puts herself first after always being put last, she's selfish. The reason people don't like her is because she stands up for herself, unlike others that have to bend their morals and boundaries to be with someone. She's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. Like, Bonnie haters are truly one of a kind. They truly are." Someone else commented making similar critiques, but adding that it was wrong of Bonnie to avoid Stefan and Damon after Grams died.
Elena, I can't just pretend like everything is okay. Everything my Grams did was to protect us from those vampires in the tomb. And now they're out, which means she died for nothing. What can I do to make it better? That's just it. There's nothing you can do. I blame him, Elena. Him and Damon. And I'm not gonna put you in a situation where you have to choose sides. I'm just having a hard time with it.
Again, this is implying that Bonnie knew her Grams was going to die when the reason Bonnie was doing any of that is because Elena asked her for help and Bonnie wanted to help her friend. It's not like Bonnie overheard them talking about this and she just offered to do the spell. They asked her. They involved her, and if they hadn't, Grams would still be alive. Yes, Stefan obviously felt bad about what happened, but Stefan will always choose his brother and Elena over anyone, and Bonnie does not need to talk to him because he's nice. Especially when Stefan is kind of an enabler when it comes to Damon and his bullshit. Another annoying comment called Bonnie out for always blaming others after offering to help. I'm rewatching, and seriously, Bonnie can't be worse. Every time I turn around, she's helping, then blames everyone around her that it's their fault. The victim mentality is driving me up a wall. Let me help. It's all your fault. That's me. I sacrifice everything. Ugh. First season was Let's Blame Elena. On season 3, nothing has changed except blames Elena plus everyone else. Can't stand her. Comments like this really piss me off because it's almost like people aren't that invested in Bonnie's story to understand why she feels the way she feels when she helps these people. Again, this is in part due to the poor writing and construction of her character, but this is also in part due to the way fans can never seem to see things from Bonnie's point of view. Constantly stating how she's the one asking them to let her help is probably one of the most infuriating things here, because while there are times where she does offer to help, they ask her way more than she asks them. Anytime something is going on that they don't know how to deal with, they call Bonnie to fix it with her magic. Caroline's a vampire now? Oh, let's call Bonnie to make her a daylight ring. Isabel and Uncle John need a device that's meant to kill vampires? Let's call Bonnie to dispel it. Matt wants to be able to see his dead sister on the other side? Better call Bonnie to bring me back to life after I drown myself in the high school pool.
I don't understand.
Jeremy can see ghosts because you brought him back from the dead. I need you to do that for me.
What? No, Matt, that's crazy.
This is gonna work, trust me.
No, Matt, I can't do that kind of magic anymore.
You don't need magic, Bonnie. You just have to be better than I was at CPR.
Do I wish Bonnie would have put her foot down more? Yes, I did. But stop acting like Bonnie isn't almost always being forced to help, whether it's to protect Elena or if it's her actually being forced to perform spells. Let's also just pretend like Bonnie almost never receives any kind of fucking benefit when she does these huge spells for people. She almost always loses someone she likes, a family member, or even her own fucking life. Bonnie has moments where she's happy and laughing, but she is mostly in distress, crying with her nose bleeding. Aside from these asinine takes, there's also the issue of race. Because it wasn't just Bonnie, the only black character in the main cast, who was treated terribly. Almost any person of color who came onto TVD was treated as disposable. And despite the fact that our main characters can be seen donning Confederate soldier attire in stupid parades, or that our most popular Salvatore was a literal Confederate soldier before becoming a vampire, the show absolutely refuses to address race or racism. And unless I suppose you have literally turned your brain off, it is nearly impossible not to notice.
Approximately what is the death toll of characters in the series? Are you crazy?
What are you, crazy? I would guess,
1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do a rough guess of
Between 50 to 80 characters.
subjective, because what about the people that came back?
I've died about 3 times, so do I count?
37. 78.
Probably in the 100.
450?
100s.
600.
A lot.
So, as a little experiment in preparation for this video, I thought it would be fun to tally up all the POC characters in each season who were killed off. I tallied up all the POC characters and then made a separate tally for all the ones who died. Now, to be totally transparent, I was counting Bonnie at first, but then realized it would make more sense to exclude her since she is one of the main characters. I also did just kind of skim through every episode because I did not have time to thoroughly rewatch every single episode all the way through. I've seen seasons 1 and 2 the most over the years, so I did go mostly based on memory, but still skimmed through all the episodes. So I suppose you can take these results with a big grain of salt. I'm sure I might have missed some people, but my point will still stand. I already know that there are some TVD fans who don't think anything of this. The amount of POC characters who showed up just to be killed off because, well, as I was saying earlier, human life is not valued in the TVD universe, period, unless you're Matt Donovan. You could argue that there are tons of white characters who are also treated as disposable, and you would be correct. But you would also be missing the point. This is something that can be frustrating whether it's about the Vampire Diaries or not. There's always going to be a group of people who want to play dumb or are just genuinely ignorant and don't understand why this is an issue. People will try to deny that racism is happening even when it is obvious if they can fall on some plausible deniability. But when you consider how many non-white characters actually existed in the series versus how many of them died, it's kind of hard to deny what we can all see with our own eyes. In season 1, aside from Bonnie, there were 8 POC characters that I counted who made an appearance, and 6 of them were killed off. A black witch named Bree in the Bloodlines episode, then Grams, a black tomb vamp named Beth Ann, Anna's mom Pearl, the black slave vampire Harper, who was the first to escape from the tomb, and lastly Anna in the season finale. In season 2, 6 mostly black characters appeared and 4 of them were killed off. 2 of them being Luca and Jonas Martin, a father and son who are witches, though they prefer the term warlock, which is so lame.
You're a witch.
Well, we prefer the term warlock.
But they are both killed off in the same episode despite the father being very powerful. In seasons 3 and 4, there weren't as many non-white characters being completely wiped out of the show, but seasons 5 and 6 really take the cake. Season 5 had 9 POC characters from what I could see, and all 9 of them were killed. And in season 6, 6 POC characters showed up and 5 of them were killed off. I thought it was important to not only count how many were killed, but how many actually appeared in the show in each season. I feel that way it's much harder to try and conflate the amount of POC characters killed with the amount of white characters who were killed because the show is mostly white. And when you're a person of color watching the show and you start to notice this pattern, you get really anxious whenever you see a non-white person appear because, well, you know what is most likely going to happen to them. Princess Weeks wrote about this in the Mary Sue a few years ago in a piece she wrote about the inherent racism in Julie Pleck's shows. While Legacies has a diverse cast, the fact that she is behind it all stopped me from watching it for years. Even when I gave in and started watching it during a flight, the whole time I was on edge because of my relationship with her series and its treatment of black people. Overall, I'd say black people make up the bulk of POC characters who appear in the show. Occasionally we get some Asian characters who I'd argue are treated even worse because there are so little of them. There aren't a ton of Latino characters, and no, I don't count Tyler because while the actor is Latino, his character is not. They don't even acknowledge that he's Latino, and both of his parents are whitey white. You can't just excuse this by saying it was a different time or no one at the time was complaining about it, because that is almost never true. It wasn't that different of a time. It was 2009 and it ran for 8 seasons, and people absolutely were complaining about it. The fact that it was an issue that lasted for its entire run is not a good look. Julie knew about these criticisms, she just didn't give a fuck. And Beverly Hills 90210, an extremely white show that also handled race abysmally, did at least acknowledge the existence of racism every season. And I am not even exaggerating here, but almost every season, excluding season 1, which had about 3, there was one episode that was centered around people of color, usually black people or Latino people. And the episode will always be about racism. People of color could not really exist in the show if there wasn't some purpose, and that purpose was always to teach the white characters about racism and make them out to be white saviors. The episodes don't age well and are high-key embarrassing mostly, See my season 1 analysis, but I will give them some points for not pretending like racism was not a thing in the way the Vampire Diaries does. This might be an out of left field reference, but the Rockstar game Red Dead Redemption 2 also has this issue where the characters of color are almost, not entirely, but almost completely reduced to storylines that specifically center around their race for the most part, act as these magical people of color who are full of wisdom and offer advice to the white characters, and also aren't involved in most of the main events of the game, but is at least not afraid to address these very real issues, such as the post-Civil War era, slavery, sexism, and women's rights. As I said many times in my videos about TBD, the show has no issue including the details of the town glorifying and celebrating the Confederacy or one of its main male leads being a Confederate soldier, but it doesn't acknowledge slavery. It doesn't refer to the black people in 1864 as slaves, even though they clearly are. They talk about the Civil War, but not actually what the war was about. They go out of their way to state that Emily is a handmaiden as if we're stupid and can't read between the lines. There's even a baffling scene in season 1 that I totally missed before rewatching it recently with a friend. But in the episode of Bloodlines, the one where Damon kidnaps Elena after rescuing her from a terrible car crash and takes her to a bar in Atlanta, Stefan tries searching for her with the help of who? Well, who else? Bonnie Bennett. He asks if she can do some kind of locator spell, but Bonnie is struggling with her powers due to trauma because Damon had just attacked her a few days before. So he ends up going and meeting her Grams to ask for her help, and recognizes her from when she used to protest in the 60s. But what, pray tell, was she protesting? If you guessed civil rights or segregation, you would be wrong.
October 1969.
I was barely a teenager.
And you were leading what was probably the only anti-war sit-in within miles of Mystic Falls. You know, when you spoke, people were mesmerized. I know I was.
Until the cops showed up.
Now obviously protesting the war is fine, but like, come on. How convenient that this black woman wasn't protesting something that would explicitly address anti-blackness. Speaking of Grams is the first witch aside from Bonnie, who was one of the first notable examples of the fucked up ways witches are treated in this universe. Until season 6, when we meet Liv, Luke, and their older sister Jo, all of the witches were black. Not most, not some, all. All of the black witches hate the vampires, hate working for them, and are always trying to advise Bonnie to stay away from them. The show overtly suggests that Bonnie is more noble than these other witches because she doesn't take their advice, even though she at times will express how much she doesn't like being in the middle.
Seeing you tonight was a wake-up call for me. Gotta stop letting vampires control me. So thank you for that.
Please, don't leave. I have so many questions. I don't want to be in the middle either. I hate it. How do I stay out of it?
Unlike me, you're one of the good ones, Bonnie. The middle of it is exactly where you need to be.
The black witches are usually punished for wanting to look out for their own more than for vampires who use them like they aren't even people and will dispose of them when they are no longer useful. You know, like the show.
How the town knew Emily Bennett was a witch? I mean, because according to Jonathan Gilbert, he was the only one who knew. I know, he didn't turn her in. I should have figured as much.
She was a loose end. I like mine tied up.
Grams was punished for not warning Damon that he wouldn't be able to get out of the tomb once he entered. What reason would Grams need to be loyal to him for? Damon forces Elena to go in with him because he feels he needs leverage because he thinks Grams is going to lock him in there, but he of course doesn't know what she knows. When Anna gets in, she bites Elena's wrist to give her mom her blood to revive her, and she screams. Stefan runs in after learning he wouldn't get out, and Bonnie is like, we can't just leave him in there.
You can't just leave him in there, Grams.
He made his choice.
She's right. He made his choice. She did warn him. But this is one of the first times the show tries to position Bonnie as morally superior to other witches like her Grams, because she does want to look out for them. Although I'd argue telling someone explicitly that if they go into this tomb, they will not be able to come out is looking out for them, but not according to the writers. In season 2 with Luca and his dad Jonas, they also try to get Bonnie on their side. Both of the warlocks are working with Elijah, who wants to help Elena, who has just learned that she is the doppelganger that Elijah's brother Klaus needs to kill in order to break the stupid curse. Jonas also has a daughter who is a black witch named Greta and works for Klaus. You'll be so surprised to learn that she is also killed instantly. So they just killed an entire black family in one season. But because her friends don't trust Elijah, somewhat understandably, they encourage Bonnie to develop a friendship with Luca in order to literally invade his mind for secrets or something with magic. He of course finds out and is pissed. A rift is formed between them that leads to Jonas the dad taking away Bonnie's powers. Bonnie is always being asked to betray her own in order to help her white friends. Even though, to be fair, Luca and Jonas were working with Elijah, who was also a vampire and white. But still, there's a pattern here. When I first watched the Vampire Diaries, I remember thinking it was kind of cool that all the witches were black. And now I realize that that is probably what the showrunners wanted us to think. Bonnie being a part of a lineage of extremely powerful witches, so powerful that some witches don't even want to fuck with them, feels like empowerment.
You should have told me another witch was involved. She's a Bennett witch, Catherine, but I'm sure you knew that.
But it's not cool or empowering when you actually pay attention. The Vampire Diaries could have possibly created a colorblind universe if they didn't go out of their way to put their hot actors in Confederate soldier costumes without any commentary on that in the slightest. And honestly, commenting on that could have made for compelling storytelling if Julia Plec and Caroline Dries weren't a part of this. People sometimes call shows like this colorblind casting. That term gets thrown around way too much sometimes in ways that really frustrate me, because if the characters of color are being treated in a very distinctive way from the white characters, a distinctively shitty way, how colorblind is it? This is the problem with the 2007 Hairspray, and more specifically the relationship between Penny and Seaweed. The overarching message is that in order to end racist discrimination, which the film conflates with all forms of discrimination,
people who are different,
but whatever, the message is everyone should be colorblind. But then with Seaweed and Penny, they have Penny calling herself a checkerboard chick and referring to him as dark chocolate. At least in the 88 version, it's clear, because John Waters' films are very camp, that we are supposed to be laughing at the white characters who try to pander to black people by saying things like, "I wish I was dark-skinned." A colorblind universe in film or television can only work if there is meaningful representation of people of color. I know the 1997 Brandy's Cinderella is like the #1 example people use when talking about colorblind casting, but it truly is like the prime example. Because aside from the cast being pretty diverse, it is also centered around a beautiful dark-skinned black girl being Cinderella. It's not like most teen shows now where they cast 2 white leads or 1 white lead and the other biracial or something, and then like 2 or 3 supporting actors who aren't white. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's willing to allow non-white leads to be desirable and be able to exist in a classic fairy tale without calling attention to it. In reality, colorblindness is not real and cannot be real in a white supremacist society, but it is sometimes possible for it to exist in fictional media. The problem is that the way showrunners and filmmakers go about it is very piss poor, for lack of a better word. There are some forms of this media, like The Handmaid's Tale, which centers mostly white women, and holds up this very white feminist version of women's empowerment, while claiming to exist in a colorblind, authoritarian state, but treating all of the women of color as one-dimensional at best, and disposable villains getting in the way of progress at worst.
Don't do that again.
What do you mean?
I mean, of Steven. I'm not gonna let you mess this up for me.
This isn't messed up.
You're cute. Used to do yoga classes, spinning or something, before? And your man liked to cook?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You guys had a first floor walk up, down Back Bay, with a garden. Had yourself a Nordstrom's card, right?
I liked anthropology.
Yeah? I used to get fucked behind a dumpster just so I could buy a 6 of Oxy and a Happy Meal. I'm clean now. I got a safe place to sleep every night and I have people who are nice to me. Yeah, they're nice.
All right.
And I want to keep it that way. Whatever they did to Steven, that's not going to happen to me. Understand?
So, something that can be really frustrating during these conversations around diversity and representation in film and television is that you'll encounter this group of people of all different races and ethnicities, but typically white, asserting how much they don't care about representation and are annoyed by people who do. It's always funny to me when people online loudly and proudly announce how they don't care about something that marginalized people care about, but clearly care enough to keep bitching about it online. It's like people who say these things still think their opinion, their not caring, is something that's really important for the world to know. Everyone should know that I don't care about this. If you don't care, that's fine. But other people are allowed to care. People will excuse certain things that happen in movies and TV shows in a way that treats these projects as something that was created out of thin air. That there weren't actual living, breathing people working behind the scenes making deliberate choices in the writing, editing, and casting. There are living, breathing people who create these projects, and those people, like most people, have biases that inform the way certain people are written and portrayed. I feel like this shouldn't have to be said, but for some reason it still does. When a movie or TV show has a predominantly white cast, that is a deliberate choice, whether we have a problem with it or not, or whether it's actually problematic or not. I'll come back to this point later. It is not just hiring people based on talent. And if those shows occasionally throw in a person of color who is presented in a very stereotypical way, that is a deliberate choice made by the writers. It doesn't even always mean it's inherently racist, though most of the time it does mean the white creators are only interested in telling stories from their own perspectives with people who look like them. Take The Handmaid's Tale, a show I also need to cover one day. The show, which is based on Margaret Atwood's 1985 novel of the same name, takes place in a dystopian future wherein fertile women are kidnapped and forced to live in a totalitarian state called Gilead, where they are raped, abused, and forced to give birth to children against their will. The series, which stars Scientologist Elizabeth Moss as the lead Offred, or June, which is her real name, was very faithful to the novel in its first season, and if the show had ended there, I think it would have been fine. But the show kept going, and the cracks that had always been there began to show. Despite the clear underlying themes of patriarchy, feminism, and reproductive rights, the show does not address race in any capacity, which could have been fine. Possibly. I think if white writers are unable to talk about the intersection of race and gender effectively, then yeah, maybe just leave it alone. The problem though is that it is a mostly white cast, but it throws in women of color who play very specific kinds of roles and are written and treated much differently than the white women. Most notably Offred or June. And it also uses language that stems from real life terms meant to refer to the ways black women are perceived and stereotyped. It is painfully noticeable how much Offred seems to always have issues with the black women she encounters, and has less empathy for them than she does other non-black women she meets. I guess aside from her best friend Myra, who managed to escape from Gilead, is a black woman and is also queer. She's played by Samira Riley, who is an amazing actress, but whose talents are not given enough attention, and her queerness is not something that we actually get to see displayed. I suppose it's the same with Emily, played by Alexis Bledel, who is a lesbian, but even she got slightly more screen time, I feel. June gets to have steamy sex scenes with the guards, but we never see Myra being gay with the women she dates. On a more dire note, June has a tendency to get away with things that most other characters aren't, but especially the black women. The women are punished if they step out of line in any way. They can lose a finger, their tongue, their eye, their fucking clitoris. But June, who has run away from Gilead millions of times, is always talking back to the commander, his wife, the aunts, and the guards, does not lose a single fucking limb. But when one of the black women of Glen tries to stand up for Janine, who the girls were just instructed to stone to death, one of the guards rocks her shit in the jaw with a rifle, causing her teeth to fall out, and she is then taken away to have her tongue cut out. Meanwhile, June, who also just refused to stone Janine and makes a big show of it, gets to just waltz her ass the fuck home. And we are not really meant to feel bad for Glen because this black woman had no interest in joining this underground resistance movement called Mayday that June was in. This narrative completely ignores that her being a black woman is probably why she was a little more hesitant to risk anything, as she could be tortured, dismembered, killed, or sent to the colonies, which is this horrible polluted area where women, or unwomen as they are called, are sent to as punishment and pretty much work until they die. You can't just say this is colorblind casting and writing when most of the women who are part of the underground are white. There's like one black girl who I'm pretty sure is mixed, but she barely talks and is mostly just super anxious and childlike in many of her scenes. I think she is supposed to be much younger than June and Emily, but still. It's weird because there's also Alma, who I assume is around her age, but is white. Other than her, there are no black women who are a part of it, and the main black woman we see as a handmaid in season 1 isn't a part of it, and explicitly states that she doesn't want to be a part of it, and is therefore seen as an irredeemable adversary. It's not just her. We see this with another black woman in season 3 of Matthew, who June also has issues with because she is not interested in the resistance and is kind of a snitch. There's even a moment where she is ostracized by the other handmaids when June purposely tries to single her out by getting everyone to testify against her, which is basically when the women are bombarded with horrible and often slut-shaming remarks from the other handmaids and blamed for fucked up things that have happened to them. Of Matthew, who is pregnant, is later shot by one of the guards and declared brain dead when she gets to the hospital. Mind you, when June was pregnant, they were less willing to cause her any physical harm, even when she ran away at the start of season 2. There's also the fact that Alfred, or June's husband, Luke, is a black man and they both have a biracial daughter. We learned in season 2 that Luke was married when they met and that they had an affair before he and June got together and started a family. I wouldn't really have a problem with this if Luke wasn't previously married to a black woman. You can't just write a black man cheating on his black wife with a white woman as a white writer and just completely brush past the optics of that. But the actual fuck. There's also the fact that this show refers to one of its brothels where they send women to work as sex workers as Jezebels. Jezebel, which I'm sure some of you know if you've seen my Norbit video, refers to an anti-black stereotype of black women which depicts them as promiscuous and sexually voracious, sometimes to a predatory degree like in Norbit with Respucia. This detail about the Jezebels Club is lifted from the book, so this criticism isn't even just aimed at the show, but it's so fucking odd to use this term in your story that is mostly about white women who are enslaved. In my personal opinion, if you're telling a story where the underlying theme is patriarchy and reproductive rights, and you cast black actresses to be in your show, you cannot just ignore the intersection between race and gender. The show being mostly white women would have actually made sense. As much as Republicans want to force women to have children they do not want, it is more specifically white women whom they want to do that to. Black mothers have been villainized in politics and in the media forever, from the welfare queen to the crack baby shit in the 80s. I don't believe that these white men are interested in having biracial children, so The Handmaids being mostly white would have been fine because a dystopian world that wants to imprison and strip away women's bodily autonomy and where the men behind it all are a bunch of cishet white dudes would also be racist. The women of color being relegated to caretaking roles like being a Martha would have made so much sense. All of the sex workers being mostly women of color or queer women or women who are not able-bodied or even fat, because fat women also don't seem to exist in this universe, would have been more interesting. Or even sending the undesirables to the colonies, which includes those who are just non-white or disabled. There's not a ton of black men aside from June's husband Luke. Where are the black men sent in Gilead? Or do black men just not exist? I don't think it would have been smart to have black men as the commanders raping white women, but it's still weird that we just don't see that many of them. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how the show does not recognize the existence of trans people. See Jesse Gender's video about that if you want a more in-depth analysis of that issue. The show embodies everything wrong with white feminism. Some cishet white women feminists desperately want to believe that all women experience the same level of oppression and discrimination and will all be treated the same in a dystopian state such as Gilead. One of my biggest gripes with these shows is the fact that the showrunners usually have some ulterior motive for why they even cast these characters of color in the first place. They want to get points for diversity. Same with 90210. Look, we dedicated an entire storyline to some black characters that you will never see again once the credits hit. Look, all the witches are powerful black women, but are all mostly played by lighter-skinned and or biracial actresses, most of whom are going to be killed. Or look, we have some black handmaids in Gilead, but don't get too attached. I mean, it won't be hard because we're going to make you hate her before we brutally kill her off, don't worry. The character of Glenn, who had her tongue cut out, also died in a suicide bombing. And while that moment is shocking at first, in no way do I feel that much of a connection to Glenn. In no way do I feel that much of a connection to her when she dies. You just remember that she had her tongue cut out, which clearly led her to a place where she was willing to blow up an entire building even if it meant she would also die. But we barely even got to know her. Her only personality trait was being pious. Then her tongue gets cut out, completely rendering her unable to reveal any further information about herself or her backstory. In the second season of Desperate Housewives, 3 black characters move into a house on Wisteria Lane, but their storyline is written as if it's meant to be a part of a different show. Most of their scenes are with each other and not the other main white cast members. To add insult to injury, their storyline ends quite tragically with one of the black sons being killed off by the police, which leads to the mom and artistic son that she abused and imprisoned, by the way, to just pack up and move. And we never see or hear from them again. In the first season of The Vampire Diaries, we get several characters of color, and once the writers have completed their inclusivity mission, they just kill and dispose of the character so that they don't have to deal with them anymore. Earlier I mentioned a black witch named Bree who appears in the season 1 episode Bloodlines, and works as a bartender at the bar Damon takes Elena to. She is the first person of color we see in this series who is killed off, and she is killed off so brutally. See, a few episodes earlier, Damon killed Stefan's best friend Lexi so he could try and frame her for all the murders that he committed. Which, like, I just need to take a second to clarify that what Damon did here is so unbelievably fucked up. What happens is this. Lexi shows up to the Salvatore house to celebrate Stefan's birthday. Damon, for some reason, takes this as an opportunity to form this convoluted-ass plan where he compels Caroline to throw a party at the grill because he feels if he threw it, then Stefan and Lexi wouldn't come. So she throws the party and a bunch of people attend the grill, including Stefan, Lexi, and Elena. As everyone is enjoying themselves, Damon goes outside to attack this random couple minding their goddamn business. He kills the girl's boyfriend, then compels the girlfriend to ID Lexi as the killer. All of this in the hopes of getting the council off their trail and pinning all of the recent deaths on her. As a reminder, this is Stefan's lifelong best friend, and he did this on his birthday.
And you did it at my birthday dinner.
Like, the fact that Damon doesn't recognize the gravity of what he did is fucking crazy, and it's weird how quickly Stefan lets this go. He does guilt trip him about it in season 2, but that's really it. So in the Bloodlines episode, to bring it back to the point I was trying to make, we learn midway through that Bree was best friends with Lexi, and we learn as soon as we meet her that Damon and her used to fuck. Afterward, Bree secretly calls Lexi's boyfriend, and he shows up later that night and almost kills Damon before Elena gives him some speech about how he should be better than him, blah blah blah. He should have just killed him, but he doesn't. He does throw his ass against a wall in a way that was really funny though. The next morning, before he and Elena leave, Damon confronts Bree and rips her fucking heart out of her chest. It is so gruesome and unfair because Bree is a witch, last I checked. Unless I forgot some detail about her not having her powers or something, why wouldn't she use her magic on him when he showed up? This speaks to the ways the witches, specifically Bennett witches, are written as these supposedly badass witches you don't want to mess with. But then vampires will just kill them in 2.5 seconds as if they don't have any power all of a sudden. It's like the writers want to uplift them as these powerful witches, but then also humble them. Anyway, the dude didn't even kill you when he should have. You should have just been happy he didn't and left. But this wouldn't be the first time Damon would brutally murder a black woman, because for some reason in season 6, they decided to retcon the fuck out of Uncle Zach, who is the nephew of Damon and Stefan, but they call him their uncle so people don't get suspicious. He mainly appeared in the first 5 episodes of season 1. We discover in this retcon that Zach had a pregnant wife who was a black woman. Now, why is this making me angry? Well, because in season 6, we learned that Damon murdered this pregnant woman, and she ended up giving birth to their niece Sarah Salvatore before she died. We also learned that Stefan has known about Sarah but has kept her identity a secret from Damon for obvious reasons. Damon literally killed this girl's mom and her father. 2 people she never got to meet. He doesn't have a right to know her, and frankly this whole storyline doesn't fucking matter anyway. They could have just left Sarah alone, but no. They create a whole storyline where there's a biracial girl pretending to be Sarah Salvatore for multiple episodes for whatever fucking reason before killing her off, and then we meet the real Sarah Salvatore through Enzo's snooping. They needed to give Enzo something to do, so he decides to spend the whole season trying to ruin Stefan's life for no reason. And what's funny is that at no point does Stefan ever seem to give a fuck about him enough for this storyline to be interesting. It is seriously one of the most useless storylines to exist in season 6, let alone the whole series, and I hate it so much. I hated it then and I will hate it forever. Throughout this, we don't ever learn that much about Sarah. We don't get to know her or anything, and then in season 8, they just decide to have this new character named Sybil stab her to death. Like, what the fuck? What was the purpose of this retcon? You hired black actors to portray these retconned characters who had no real bearing on the main characters' plots, did absolutely nothing with them, and then just killed them off? Stefan and Damon don't even get that many scenes with Sarah. They don't form any kind of relationship with her. Their mom, Stefan and Damon's mom, is revealed to have been alive this entire time but trapped in a prison world, and when they reunite, they get a whole storyline together. They argue, they have deep conversations. Where Sarah Salvatore was just part of some Z plot with Enzo, only for none of that to culminate in anything other than us meeting her and then not seeing her for a whole season and then watching her die in the final season. It is so gross and feels very intentional. A lot of people have spoken over the years about Julie Plech's pettiness. She's a petty ass bitch in a way that I could respect if the pettiness wasn't full of so much racial bias. I don't say this to imply that you can't ever kill off POC characters in the show, though I'm sure that's how some annoying people will interpret that, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you can't view these things in a vacuum. You have to consider the context. That does matter. RDR 2 also has this problem where characters of color literally die and risk their lives trying to save white characters in 1899. Spoiler alert if you haven't played the game, but one of the most infuriating examples is when Eagle Flies, who is indigenous and very young, literally dies for Arthur, the main character, this old-ass man in one of the missions towards the end of the game. Should note that at this point, Arthur is literally fucking dying of TB. Why do that? Bonnie consistently risking her life and the lives of her own family members to help her selfish white friends is very hard to watch. In season 5, Bonnie is forced to become an anchor, which is this supernatural thing that stands between reality and the other side, which is where supernaturals go when they die. They must pass through the anchor to get there, and apparently it is excruciating. So for an entire season, we watch Bonnie constantly in pain. It feels like the writers revel in not only causing her pain, but having other characters brush off her pain. Damon is usually the one to do this, but there are times where it feels like the words coming out of Damon's mouth are things that the writers would like to say out loud, but know that it's better to put those opinions in the mouth of a villain or anti-villain like Damon, and not say that IRL at a Comic-Con event or something. In season 3, we finally meet Bonnie's mom, who I guess abandoned Bonnie, something that we don't learn until season 3. But yes, her mom abandoned her and took in the son of her ex-boyfriend named Jamie. Bonnie's mom, Abby, is a witch whose powers have been suppressed. Something she says was nature's way of punishing her for leaving Bonnie. Around this time, Klaus and his family members, whom he daggered and left in coffins for centuries, have been freed. Their mother, Esther, isn't exactly happy about this and conspires with Elena and the gang, particularly Bonnie and Abby, to kill them all. So in season 3, episode 15, All My Children, Elena is kidnapped by Rebecca when she and Elijah find out about Esther's plan. And they use her to get Damon and Stefan to kill either Bonnie or Abby to stop the spell from happening, because witches can't be both. So Damon and Stefan show up where they are doing the spell, and Damon forces Abby to drink vampire blood before snapping her neck. This upsets Bonnie so much that she doesn't want to be around Elena because, as Caroline correctly tells her later, everything that happened tonight happened to save you.
But put yourself in her shoes. Everything that happened tonight was to save you. She loves you so much. Somehow she's always the one who gets hurt.
Which is what always happens to Bonnie. The characters, aside from Elena, hardly offer any kind of comfort to Bonnie, and they have Damon cruelly downplay her feelings. Like, he makes gross jokes about it to Elena at first. And then a few episodes later, he snarkily tells Bonnie that he's so sorry that we had to turn your mother into a vampire to save Elena's life. The way he ends with Elena's life is key here. He just said we had to turn your mother into a vampire as if that wasn't a big deal. Like, oh my god, okay, so we had to kill her and make her be a vampire against her will. What are you so mad about, Bonnie? It was to save Elena. Hello, Elena, the most important person in the whole universe. Like, that's really awful. And even though Bonnie hits back at him in this scene, it's not enough to make Damon circle back to this moment later and express some kind of remorse. Because why the fuck not? We did it with Vicky, and we knew Vicky about as long as we knew Abby. We got to know Vicky more because she had more screen time, but still. Season 1 ends with Damon going to Jeremy and not even fully apologizing, but admitting that what he did to Vicky was wrong. He forced her to become a vampire for less serious reasons, and she didn't even get to live her life. She dies the episode after she has turned. If Damon can express remorse over this, why can't he do that with Bonnie and Abby? Why is this situation just papered over? This was also a problem with the storyline around her and Grams. Stefan does continue to be kind to Bonnie for the most part, even when she stops talking to him, but neither of them apologize for what happened with Grams, nor do they even offer their condolences. And not everything has to be wrapped up in an apology, but you could at least wrap it up somehow. That sounds sexual, but you know what I mean. The show thinks that because Abby was forced to turn to save Elena, it's somehow less fucked up than what happened to Vicky. It's not. That is a traumatizing thing to go through, but the writers make it clear that they don't want to acknowledge the full gravity of that. Even though when Stefan was trapped in a locker by Silas and thrown into the ocean at the end of season 4, where he was to drown over and over and over again, we got a whole storyline where he had to conquer his PTSD. Also counter that with the way Bonnie's trauma is hardly addressed after she is freed from the prison world. Girl isn't even back a day before Damon is asking Bonnie for shit yet again. Some characters and shows just exist as plot devices. Friendly Space Ninja, who made a great deep dive covering the whole series some years back, spoke about how Bonnie becomes the show's get out of jail free card whenever they back themselves into a corner with all the twists, turns, and cliffhangers. As many others have stated, sometimes you just straight up don't see her for a while until suddenly she shows back up and then you realize it's because she became plot relevant again. But never her own plot. At least not one that wasn't in some way connected to the plot of a more present and favored character. I was gonna say important, but that's not the best word to use here, because Bonnie is extremely important and also extremely unimportant at the same time. She's so unimportant that her family life goes mostly unexplored for the entire series, but she's also so important that, like the Powerpuff Girls, the day is always being saved by her. Every season ends with her saving the day for everyone. In the season 2 finale, Jeremy is shot by Sheriff Forbes on accident when she aims for Damon, and Bonnie brings him back to life with the help of 100 dead witches that she had to harness power from in order to help defeat Klaus. Also should say these witches are mad at Bonnie because they don't like what she used their magic for, which was to help vampires. So again, these witches are dead. Some who have probably been dead for hundreds of years, and they're still like, Bonnie, girl, stop helping these white people. But she begs them to help her and even calls out for Emily because she loves him. Sure, there was the time when she and Damon got stuck in the 1994 prison world, which was created to keep this dude named Kai trapped after he murdered his entire family. This is the guy who that commenter was complaining about when they said Bonnie should just forgive him after all the horrible shit he put her through. Because I don't actually feel like giving a ton of context for this, I'll just say they get an opportunity to get out of the prison world during an eclipse. But Kai, being evil, tries to kill them so he can get out and leave them there, but Bonnie tries to fight him off and he shoots her with an arrow. Then she throws this compass thing to him, which was the key to getting home, and he does. But then the window is closed and they're now both stuck there. The way this is framed is just another example of Bonnie being this selfless, caring person who Damon spends the whole season expressing gratitude for. So we can just ignore how fucking gross and disgusting that is to make this woman do that for a man like Damon. Bonnie being painted as this saint for what she did is how the show tries to make up for what they do to Bonnie during this season. For 15 episodes, Bonnie is trapped in this prison world. The whole time she's in there, we see the characters trying to figure out how to get her out, and Bonnie almost gets out multiple times but fails. One of the first times being when she is stuck there with Kai and he finds a way to get out, but only after he's already wounded her numerous times and left her to die. Bonnie became so depressed and lonely after being stuck there for months that she tried to kill herself. What? This is why that person saying things get better when Bonnie starts accepting vampires is really annoying. She shouldn't really have to accept them when all they do is ruin her fucking life. But you know, sometimes there are moments where people end up telling on themselves in a way where it is very transparent that they lack self-awareness. Self-awareness is really a gift and a curse. But as someone who is extremely self-aware to an extent that actually drives me insane, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Because in the summer of 2020, Julie Plec, in a very bittersweet but iconic moment in history, vindicated the Black women fans who always knew that her treatment of Bonnie was atrocious.
Replying to @TheStallion. I believe Black women are going to save us all, and I am so sorry to put that pressure on you, but white women are continually failing all of us. I hope you understand that me seeing you as a hero is not meant to add to your anxiety. Rather, it's to lift you up and celebrate you.
This was in response to a tweet from Megan Thee Stallion around the time she got shot, and everyone was making fun of it and harassing her relentlessly. Black women are so unprotected, and we hold so many things in to protect the feelings of others without considering our own. It might be funny to y'all on the internet and just another messy topic for you to talk about, but this is my real life, and I'm real life hurt and traumatized. That was what Julie was responding to. What a disgusting thing to do, but also very telling. As with Bonnie, Julie sees a Black woman in distress expressing her pain and decides to openly dismiss that so she can tell her that it is on her shoulders to save all of us. Even though Megan just said that Black women are forced to bottle up their emotions for other people and how they put that first above all else. And Julie Plec is just like, well, those other people aren't going to be able to save you though. Sorry, girl. And what really sucks is that you can tell that she thought she just put out the wokest tweet that ever woked. Like, she was so proud of herself when she hit send. And then very quickly realized that that was an incredibly weird and tactless thing to tweet and deleted it. Weirdly, that tweet very much resembles the way the white characters pander to Black people in Hairspray. Julie Plec, in a very white feminist way, thinks that telling Black women that they are so strong that they're going to save everyone is a compliment, when it isn't. In fact, I'd say it's quite insulting and deeply unfair to place that burden on our shoulders, try to butter us up about it, especially when no one gives a fuck about black women anyway. And on another note, it just doesn't even make sense because while there were and are certainly a lot of white people who are cruel towards Megan Thee Stallion, the black community was and still does participate just as much in that cruelty. It, like every fucking thing nowadays, was just another battle of the sexes between black men and black women. So many men, and black men in particular, were absolutely horrific to Megan over this, and it was very disheartening to watch. This isn't really an issue of white women fucking it up. This is about the particular ways black women and their pain is completely disregarded and made into memes. So again, it really is illuminating that that would be her response to a black woman, pointing out how the world doesn't really care about them, but as Julie just demonstrated, expects them to be saviors and caretakers to everyone anyway. That is precisely how the writers viewed Bonnie and her role in the series. They viewed her as a mammy.
So the Bonnie-Damon relationship, I mean, poor Bonnie, he just drags her repeatedly through the mud over and over again, and she still loves him. I don't know why. Crazy woman. But that was a sweet scene, and Bonnie does end up having a lot to do with it, but obviously, unfortunately, at her own expense. You know, I mean, Kat Graham is such a strong actor, and Bonnie is such a strong character that I want her, and you'll see her sort of start coming back into her own and sort of taking a lot less shit, you know. She just has a huge heart, and when you have a huge heart and everyone wants something from you, it wears you down a little bit. So I think it's time for Bonnie to kick some ass.
So after season 6, Nina Dobrev officially left the series, and the way they write Elena off is by having Kai almost kill her and make Bonnie her literal lifeline. So as long as Elena stays asleep, Sleeping Beauty style, Bonnie will remain alive, and if Bonnie dies, Elena will wake up. The writers of this show are so shitty that they couldn't even write Elena out of the show without tying Bonnie's life to it in some way. They have Damon fantasizing about killing Bonnie or her dying in an accident so that he can get Elena back. Around this time, Damon and Bonnie had become friends after being trapped in the prison wall together for months. And this is when the Damon fans got a little louder.
Cool, and then we have a Teen Choice nom, so it's really nice that people are appreciating the work that Ian and I do together and are seeing that and recognizing that. It really means a lot.
Is that something that you would ever consider doing?
It's so, their friendship on the show is so powerful.
It's just so fun. I don't know, I'm feeling like Damon is still madly in love with Elena. Bonnie's gonna maybe have her own love interest this year, and
it's not gonna be Damon, so.
Sorry, Damon fans.
Sorry,
Ain't
happening. Rejected.
Thanks for the award, though.
On the record, I'm open to that, and I know the fans would like to see something like that. But you know, it's really their show.
Don't mess with a good thing. That's how we think.
Gone. You guys are running out of Gilbert.
I've pitched female witches. I've pitched that. I've pitched Bonnie.
I'm gonna say right here and now, I never was a Damon shipper. Damon has done so many awful things to Bonnie that it would take a lot of groveling on the part of Damon for me to get on board with him dating or even being fuck buddies. However, the only reason I am going to be a Damon defender today is because we all know the reason why it didn't happen, and it does matter, and it does make me angry because Bonnie and Damon ending up together would have made so much sense. Many DE fans pushed back against the ship because of course they did. Like on some level, that's fine. If you want Elena and Damon together, then okay. I get not wanting him with someone else, but like, Elena was gone. She was not on the show anymore, and she was not coming back because the showrunners refused to pay Nina Dobrev what she deserved because sexism. And it's very weird the way the show can't have Damon move on and fall in love with someone else who doesn't look like Catherine. Because the relationship between Damon and Elena is terrible. They're bad for each other and they both know it. Damon remains this shitty person in a constant cycle of being horrible, then wanting to be good so Elena will like him, but not being able to decide if he wants to be a good witch or a bad witch. I think Bonnie would have been a step above Elena because Bonnie is not easily fooled by his charm. She is able to resist him and actually hold him accountable when he does shitty things. I guess some DE fans were insisting that they should remain platonic because Bonnie and Damon didn't end up together in the original book series, but like, that's such a stupid defense. The show has literally never been faithful to the books, and the showrunners have openly stated that they had no intention of ever doing that. Elena in the books was blonde and had a baby sister named Margaret or something, not a big ass teenage brother named Jeremy. Also, it doesn't matter if something didn't happen in the books. When Julie heard that people wanted Bonnie with Damon or with Kai or Klaus, she shut everyone down by saying that the amazing, beautiful Bonnie would never date a horrible man like Damon. I've seen this sentiment echoed by other TVD fans. As I said in the first part, Bonnie is held to a completely different standard than the other characters. Caroline and Elena can sleep with and date men who have murdered their ex-boyfriends' moms, or men who have murdered their own brothers in front of them. And we can be told that the man who did murder her brother is better for her than the brother who would never have done that. But angelic Bonnie can't let a bad man's penis enter her, otherwise that will sully her virtuous pussy. I don't think that Bonnie being too good is why the writers didn't want her with any of these male characters. Liv Parker was a witch and they had no issue pairing her with Tyler. Yes, they stopped giving a fuck about him by that time, but still. He is a step above a Jeremy or an Enzo because he dated another one of the main female characters and has been on the show since the beginning. As some smarter TVD fans express on the TVD subreddit, the way Bonnie's desirability or lack thereof is treated on the series is not only low-key racist, but is also just very mean to Kat Graham, who we can all look at and see as an incredibly beautiful woman. Elena and Caroline's beauty and desirability is constantly remarked upon, even by villains who hit on them and protect them from danger. Meanwhile, Bonnie is only ever threatened and demeaned, and the one guy who actually showed an interest in her for her cheated on her with his ghost ex-girlfriend. And the writing made it seem that Jeremy had been thinking about Anna through his entire relationship with Bonnie, as if Bonnie was just the rebound. I think the first person to call Bonnie pretty was the carnival guy who immediately got killed by Caroline later in the episode. R.I.P. Carter, you are a man of taste. Beauty is subjective, but all these girls are clearly attractive. But somehow Bonnie is never pursued and wooed the same way Elena and Caroline are, even though you'd think she would be, considering how often she is needed to do a spell for both the heroes and the bad guys. You're telling me not one villain like Klaus or Cole or even Silas thought to try seduction on her in order to get her on their side? I mean, you could say Bonnie's not the kind of girl that'll fall for that, but they don't know that about her. So it's kind of baffling that none of them try. Not to be creepy, but we never really see Bonnie being sexual either. TVD, like most vampire media, is incredibly horny and overtly sexual. Elena doesn't seem to have dated that many men, aside from Matt, Stefan, and Damon, but we learn intimate details about her and Caroline's sex lives. Matt and Elena knew each other since childhood and ended up dating when they got to high school, and Caroline tells Stefan that they were each other's first. We don't know who Caroline's first was, but she talks about sex much more explicitly than both of her friends because she's the blonde one. We see Elena and Caroline making out with their boyfriends and having drunk sex, but you would think Bonnie was asexual or aromantic or both, but the way she just straight up doesn't talk about sex or dating or anything most of the time. I don't even think we see her get drunk really, even though all these bitches are functioning alcoholics. Being asexual and aromantic isn't a bad thing, but that's not what the show was trying to do with anyone. It was 2009, that was not the intention. Other than the vampire she goes on a date with in season 1, who turns out to be working with Anna and just wanted to use her to do the spell, Bonnie's romantic problems are pretty much non-existent. Jeremy starts to develop a crush on Bonnie, begins flirting with her, and keeps trying to hang out with her. This is after Jeremy has been fully briefed on the world of supernatural after befriending Anna in season 1. And eventually they start dating secretly because Bonnie feels a little weird about dating her best friend's brother. But when she does tell Elena, she is of course very supportive of it. Now, a lot of TVD fans seem to hate Jeremy, which I am a little confused by. Not because he's my favorite character or anything, but because I always felt bad for him. He was shamed by so many people in season 1 for smoking weed to cope with the loss of both of his parents, was mind raped by Damon and to an extent Elena, and then was shamed for being rightfully mad at Elena when he found out about it. My problem with Jeremy is my problem with everything else in the show. He is poorly written and the show does not care about him really, which is why they put him and Bonnie together. It's the same thing that happened with Enzo. He was on the show since season 5 and first had a crush on Caroline for the longest, but I guess no one wanted them together because everyone hated him, so they just threw him to Bonnie and had them fall in love off screen when the show does a time jump in seasons 7 and 8. The best thing about Jeremy and Bonnie's relationship is how much Jeremy looks out for Bonnie, at least in season 2. Unlike everyone else, he is concerned about her well-being and doesn't want her to do spells that might kill her. Besides that, they aren't an interesting couple because we hardly see them being an actual couple. When they're together, there's always some other supernatural bullshit they're working on, where Jeremy is just there to help her find a spell or something. We don't get any sex scenes between her and Jeremy or any big memorable moments as we do with every other couple on the show. In season 3, after Bonnie brought Jeremy back to life the first time, Jeremy ends up seeing ghosts from the other side, such as Vicky and Anna, and he starts cheating on Bonnie with Ghost Anna when he realizes he can feel her physically. Bonnie finds out and breaks up with Jeremy, but they go nowhere else with this. Bonnie is upset and Elena is upset when she learns what Jeremy did, but it's not treated with the same level of concern as they do with Damon and Elena, or Stefan and Elena, or Caroline and Tyler. We don't even see Jeremy pining to get Bonnie back, really. Then she almost has a thing with her mom's ex-boyfriend's son, Jamie, before he just disappears. I mean, I guess I'm happy he wasn't killed off, but the fuck happened to him? Nothing romantic happens for her in season 4, but in season 5, after she is made the anchor, her and Jeremy just get back together and we finally get a sex scene between them. But then in season 6, Bonnie and Damon are sent to the 1994 prison world, and because no one at home knows what happened to them, Jeremy starts dating other girls, but still helps Elena and later Damon when he gets out to help Bonnie get out of the prison world. What's weird is that in the middle of season 6, Jeremy leaves the show for good, but this comes just before we get Bonnie back. So Jeremy and Bonnie don't even get any closure on their relationship. It was so unceremonious and strange. Whether you like them together or not doesn't really matter. Every relationship on the show that came to an end usually provided some closure before having them move on from each other. The trope of these sexless POC token character is not uncommon with many different shows. I never watched that much of The Big Bang Theory, though I have seen a few episodes here and there, but I've heard people complain about this issue with the character of Raj, played by Kunal Nair, who is an Indian actor. Andre from Victorious and Sydney from The Bear are other great examples of the sexless POC token character. People are more willing to friendship when it comes to interracial relationships.
What is one of your favorite memories together on set?
Ooh, together on set.
We had a lot of memories on set. I cannot believe, for the freaking life of me, that Bonnie and Damon did not have some complicated, protracted, affair.
Well, that doesn't work with the systematic racism in Hollywood, so it wouldn't have worked.
Well, you were with Enzo.
But anyways...
Hey, you were with Enzo.
Yeah, but he wasn't as popular as your character. It would have...
It made no sense, because if you think about it, it was the whole triangle. It was the best friend, and then Elena was dead or sleeping in the coffin, and then the best friend is with the boyfriend, and she wakes up.
Okay, let's focus.
Anyway.
Let's not be bitter. Let's not be bitter.
So many DE fans would say they ship Damon and Bonnie as friends, and both Julie and Caroline acted like destroying their friendship by having them be romantic would just be the worst thing in the world. Even though it actually would have made more sense to have them get together than Stefan and Caroline. It's not just characters of color, though, who receive the desexualization treatment. This happens to fat characters, disabled characters, and queer characters. As many queer characters who crop up throughout the series and TVD, queer people are also kind of treated like shit. I wasn't aware of this before reading this article about the show in Fabulous Mag, but all of the gay characters who appear in the show were killed. Caroline's dad, Bill, we learn early on, is divorced from her mom due to him coming out as gay. We don't officially meet him in person until season 3, and our first impression of him is him literally torturing his daughter in the hopes of somehow curing her vampirism. It's so stupid. Your daughter died, sir. She is dead. You can't undo her death because she is now an undead creature and you're not Bonnie Bennett. So I just never understood what the actual fuck this plot was, other than to be an obvious allegory for gay conversion therapy. So one of the first and few gay characters we actually see in the series so far, and we're meant to hate his guts. I'm not against gay villains or anything, but he's not even a fun gay villain. He kidnapped and tortured his daughter for hours in his first episode. And instead of making the relationship more thoughtful and interesting, they just regurgitate the same plot from season 2 when her mom finds out that she's a vampire. And before you know it, her dad is turned into a vampire against his will, but refuses to complete the transition because he hates vampires and eventually dies. We barely knew him or anything about his relationship with Caroline or his relationship with his partner Steven, who is occasionally mentioned in the first 3 seasons. In season 5, we meet Liv and Luke Parker, 2 twin siblings who are both witches and become involved with the gang's supernatural nonsense midway through the season. Liv and Luke just become 2 very uninteresting characters who took up more real estate than they should have. The main thing we know about Luke is that he's gay, a witch, and has a twin sister. Liv got slightly more screen time than her brother Luke, and she even gets a whole romantic subplot with Tyler at one point in season 6. She's essentially just Caroline season 1 2.0. I don't remember us actually getting to see Luke date other men, and just like with Bill, before we can even get attached to him, he is killed off midway through season 6. Liv is also killed, but not until the end of the season. Season 7 introduced its first lesbian couple who are also villains and usually work together as a team. And they don't even get to survive the whole season. They are killed in episode 16 in a fucking explosion. On the TVD YouTube channel, they posted the clip of Nora and Louise dying, and one of the first comments said, "I can't believe that Nora and Mary Lou are dead and Matt Donovan is still alive." It made me laugh because it's true. It is truly baffling that Matt Donovan got as much screen time as he did, let alone him being in the series from beginning to end. Caroline was at least sometimes connected to the main plot, but Matt was 10 times more useless than she was. And yet he got B-plots all throughout season 1, while Bonnie only got like 1 or 2. Even the actor playing him acknowledged how Matt stopped having a storyline.
Why does Matt commit suicide in season 3?
Because he hates his life and he has no storyline.
People who complain about representation in the media are all coming at it from varied perspectives. Some people feel like representation always matters, and if there is a show with a mostly white cast, that is inherently terrible and regressive. There's this feminist movie podcast I listened to called The Bechdel Cast with Jamie Loftus and Caitlin Durante. I love them. They're my faves, but I do find the ways they critique movies to be a classic example of virtue mirroring, which was a term coined by the YouTuber Olay. The reason I enjoy this podcast is because they have really deep and interesting conversations about movies with an intersectional feminist perspective in mind, and they do go out of their way to discuss Black films and queer films and seem to genuinely care about being inclusive with how they dissect movies. However, sometimes their analyses can be very pretentious. In the past, because they have gotten a little better. But when the podcast was in its infancy, it would cover an older film that might be considered a classic and beloved film, and if it was hashtag problematic in any way, they strongly asserted that it should no longer be on your list of favorite movies. Sometimes when they rate movies, they take away points if the movie didn't have any POC characters. They wouldn't provide actual context for it. The movie is just bad because of how white the cast is. To be fair, this is how a lot of people watch the media. This is not unique to them, but condemning a film for being extremely white without any context for why it's like that is a terrible way to analyze the media. Sometimes it is because of racism. Most of the time it is. And yeah, it would be superb if so much media wasn't so fucking straight, white, and thin all the time. Frankly, most white people, especially in Hollywood, are not interested in telling stories that involve people of color. When they feel they have to have a person of color somewhere so they don't get yelled at, their portrayal and how they are written is usually so bad that it feels worse than if they just hadn't had any people of color at all. Again, see season 2 of Desperate Housewives. And there are people who are just blatantly racist or bigoted, as we see whenever a live-action Disney remake decides to cast a non-white person to play the princess. These people roll their eyes at this discourse and think very highly of themselves. They think people who complain about representation are sad, pathetic babies who are relying too much on the media to make them feel better about themselves. They claim they don't care, yet they spend hours online complaining because they don't care so much, you guys. But they get angry when marginalized people are inserted into projects that involve mostly white or mostly straight characters, and when this happens, they mock it as an example of wokeness going too far, wokeness ruining movies. It's frustrating because people who have this kind of privilege and are used to seeing themselves on TV and in the cinema never question why, say, white characters are sometimes shoved into shows or movies that are predominantly black. Some of the most famous child sitcoms with majority black cast had a random white person as a main character. This is potentially because these shows are made or produced by white people who feel like having an entirely black cast is just too much. The Cheater Girls are a great example of this. The classic DCOM is based on a series of books by Deborah Gregory. The book had a few more characters than what we see in the movie, and the first few books center around mostly non-white women, including one named Dorinda, who was mixed in the books, but is played by a purely white actress in the movies because Disney was not gonna have an entire cast full of black and brown women. They just could not do that. So let's whitewash a character of color so that white people can have their much needed representation. Honestly, it would have been better had they just created a new character instead of whitewashing one whose storyline focused on the fact that she was biracial. Zoe from the Proud Family, Chelsea from That's So Raven, Stevie from the Parkers. I don't necessarily hate these characters, to be clear. Stevie is actually a great character. Stevie is actually a great friend, and Chelsea is fine. I mean, one day I'm going to do a That's So Raven deep dive, and I cannot wait to complain about how weird Chelsea's trajectory throughout the series was. She literally goes from being a normal girl who's a little dumb sometimes to an actual baby with a heightened voice. But anyway, I don't hate these people. And I don't think it's innately bad to have a white friend amongst a group of black people. I've been in friend groups like that growing up. I also understand that the black characters having a white friend is not always the result of white producers just needing there to be a white person somewhere in the cast. But let's not pretend like we don't know why that is such a common thing. Like in the first couple of seasons of Insecure, Issa has several side plots with her white coworker Frida. They both work for a nonprofit that supports children of color who attend schools in low-income neighborhoods. And the storylines touch on the white savior vibe, for lack of a better word, that is attached to these kinds of nonprofits. Back in 2021, just before the HBO series came to an end, Issa Rae spoke out about being advised to add a white woman character, like Frida, to Issa's group of friends in the show so that white people would be interested in it. Issa, of course, refused, and after a few seasons, Issa actually ends up quitting the nonprofit and we don't see Frida again. Issa Rae has said that she wanted people to see that we, as in black people, are enough. People would complain that media that is created by and includes people of color and queer people always has to have some underlying woke message about equality or systemic oppression, as if that is the fault of marginalized filmmakers and showrunners, and not the entertainment industry that treats them the same way 90210 treated their non-white characters. You can only get a movie if it's about racism, because otherwise, why are you here? Whiteness is the default, which is why white people can get roles in films about a myriad of topics. Then there are people like me who feel like representation certainly matters, but sometimes it just doesn't. I was talking about this with a friend when we were watching TVD together, and we talked about how we would have rather TVD just had an all-white cast. Would people have complained about it being super white? Yes, they would. But at least we wouldn't have been subjected to seeing the only black woman being treated so terribly.
You know, a lot of the fans had always said that when the character goes through a certain tragedy, she sometimes goes off and deals with it away from the rest of the characters. Whereas in this new season, you actually see her very much dealing with her choices and the choices that are going on that are beyond her control.
Like acting or singing?
It depends on what project. I mean, there have been days on set where I'm like,
Who the fuck wrote this? This is garbage.
So
When you're reading these scripts, are you ever like, crap, is this the last time?
No, because they usually kind of, like, they've called me and said, okay, we're killing you, but you're only be going for a commercial break, or we're killing you and we're sending you off. So I kind of already know what's happening. But it still makes it like, okay, thanks for telling me.
Why do you feel like they mess with her life more than anybody else's then? Because nobody else.
I don't know, maybe they just want to kill me off the show.
No, because if they wanted to kill you off, you'd be gone. They've had a million chances, but you're always back. Which
they might have a fan backlash, but I don't know. I think they probably just want to kill me. See if they can.
Some people might ask, so it would have been better if Bonnie was white? Wouldn't it have been bad if any character was treated how she was? I suppose you could say that, but the thing is, if Bonnie was played by a white woman, she would not have been written that way. Period. Case in point, Liv Parker. When white showrunners decide to sprinkle in marginalized people, not because they actually want to or are genuinely doing colorblind casting, but are doing so for diversity points or again so people don't yell at them, this is what usually happens. They are not comfortable showing a black woman being desirable because they don't see her that way, in the way they do with Caroline and Elena. I remember getting a comment on my first TVD video where I briefly talked about Bonnie and complained about the awful ways Cat Graham was made up on this show, and someone commented that maybe the reason they did her like that was because Cat Graham is gorgeous and they didn't want her to show up Nina Dobrev and Candace King or something. I actually think a few people commented something similar, and that is just a baffling defense that I don't even think it's worth fully critiquing. This isn't to say that it's only white people who write their marginalized characters in a uniquely strange and offensive way. This happens when men write women, this happens when able-bodied people write disabled characters, or how thin people write fat characters, but it is particularly awful when it comes to women of color. I get so annoyed when people reduce your complaints about racism to just being a sensitive lib or a killjoy feminist, because it ignores the fact that most marginalized people are generally fine about consuming media that doesn't represent them. By fine, I mean that they are still able to watch things that don't represent them because, well, most things don't represent us. And unfortunately, we're going to run out of movies if we're only watching the ones that include people who look and act like us, or the ones who don't write characters in extremely bigoted ways, or have fucked up progressive overarching narratives. Women are used to watching movies and TV shows and listening to music that is overtly misogynistic. Does that stop us from listening to it or enjoying some of it? No. I mean, sometimes it can, and that's also okay. But for the most part, marginalized people are used to watching things with a bunch of white people, or straight or thin people. While there are surely more shows and movies that don't just center these groups, Hollywood is still mostly interested in telling stories about the majority, the default. The people who we can apparently always count on to make us money, even though it has been proven many times that marginalized people can bring in a huge audience as well and even win Oscars for it. When I watch The Handmaid's Tale, I'm not exactly irritated because there are a bunch of white people. I'm irritated because the writing of the non-white women feels racist. Or, well, is racist. I can mostly consume things like this with that in the back of my mind, but I would be lying if I said it isn't sometimes difficult to rewatch these shows. Which sucks, because The Vampire Diaries is such a fun show to watch, and especially to binge. It's so engaging in its first 3 seasons. But the treatment of Bonnie, plus the knowledge of how weird and low-key racist Julie Plec and her writing partner Caroline Dry's word towards her behind and in front of the scenes, makes me sick, and extremely sad for Kat Graham, who seems like such a lovely person. It doesn't matter that TVD is over now, or that it happened 10 or so years ago. It is extremely important that we talk about this, because as much as I want more representation, I don't want to be pandered to or made to feel like I should be appreciative when a showrunner casts people of color in their show clearly so that I can give them the liberal stamp of approval or something. I want more representation, but I'm actually fine if white filmmakers don't want to cast people of color if it's clear that part of the reason they don't want to is just pure racism. I think the problem comes in when certain filmmakers make themselves out to be these progressive feminists who write movies about women, but those women are always white, thin, wealthy, and conventionally attractive, and their understanding of feminism is incredibly shallow. Or some of those feminist filmmakers do things that are antithetical to feminism or leftism. As much as Lena Dunham did deserve some pushback for the casting on Girls, I still enjoyed the show, and knowing how Lena Dunham is, I don't think adding a woman of color to the cast would have resulted in anything good. I enjoyed Inside Amy Schumer, the first 3 seasons at least. It has some genuinely good commentary on patriarchy and rape culture, but it never really touched on race, and I'm happy it didn't, because the commentary would have been terrible as we saw in the 5th season that came out after a years-long hiatus. Because what else could it have been? The show was mostly created by a racist white woman. I do think people with privilege should use their privilege for good. It would be great if more filmmakers who take up a ton of space in the entertainment industry would help marginalized creators, but it would also be great if Hollywood just gave more opportunities to them in the first place. Black actors on shows or movies with mostly white casts should not have to wear terrible wigs because the show didn't want to hire hairstylists who can do black hair. And it shouldn't even be legal for shows to just be able to get away with that kind of discrimination and exclusion. As usual, it's the system that needs to change, but I also think we need to do better. The reason the fandom ignored black fans who were screaming into the ether about the Bonnie problem is because younger generations still have a racism problem. This will be dissected more at length in a future video I'm going to make about Family Guy, but Gen Z is not this woke progressive generation that we're constantly being referred to as. We're not a monolith, and I do hate when people lump all members of Gen Z into one category when it's very obvious that the problem with Gen Z and frankly millennials, Gen Xers, and boomers is cishet men, and cishet white men in particular. Y'all love to drag white women, but no one wants to talk about the fact that cishet white men are extremely fucking annoying, even the ones who aren't conservatives. I grew up around a lot of racist white people. That includes teachers, principals, and my own peers. They would make racist jokes about black people's names, or would imitate and mock the way black people speak. White boys used to draw swastikas on their homework papers as a joke. I was in no way surprised when we learned how many Gen Z men voted for Trump. I think this expectation that was placed onto Gen Z to save the world came from this myth that we were somehow this progressive and enlightened generation who knew exactly how to even go about doing that. But in reality, many people of my generation have struggled with unpacking or confronting their own racist biases as every other generation before us has. Growing up with a black president didn't exactly change us for the better. It just convinced us that the world we were living in had completely evolved from the issue of race and gender. But watching these shows and being a part of these fandoms quickly reminded many of us that we hadn't. People say the media is supposed to be escapist and that you should turn off your brain when consuming it. Aside from being an extremely anti-intellectual form of advice, it is just not possible for most people to do that. How can the media be escapist when the media you consume reminds you of the things you're trying to escape from? I can still watch TVD and have a gay old time and still enjoy making millions of videos talking about it, but turning off my brain is just not an option when the issues are so prominent and unignorable. Someone made a long but great Reddit post calling out the TVD fandom for not wanting to call what happened to Bonnie racism, and the post was apparently reported for incivility. One of the mods denounced the report, which I appreciate, but what is so uncivil about calling out a well-known issue? How is it more uncivil than the ways the fandom has acted towards black people and the black characters on the show? The post wasn't insulting anyone. It was a very straightforward post that was simply calling attention to an issue that has existed in the fandom for years. This isn't that old of a post. It was posted 8 months ago. As someone commented, that report is very, very telling. When are we going to actually listen to marginalized people and take these criticisms seriously? We obviously can't change what happened to Bonnie or any other character of color subjected to the same treatment. All we can do is try to ensure it doesn't continue happening. But things can't really change if the people who aren't willing to call that thing a thing keep silencing and overshadowing the people who are.
That, oh, I'm the only Black person here. And, oh, wow, I'm only a guest star. And yeah, you want to be grateful, but you also feel like, you're looking at your white counterparts and you're like, wow, I'd really do something with that role if I got a chance to do that. If I could only get the opportunity to even audition for that, and I think I remember that feeling coming in from The Parent Trap. I did have one line, it got cut. And I remember feeling the disappointment. I think I was like 8 or 9 years old. I'm watching that movie with my mom, and I was like, man, I would have killed it with a bigger role, Yeah. And that's something that I have to be careful of as I get older, and it still happens sometimes. But when I think back on that, I think I really, I'm grateful for it, but I think there was a lot of...
it was just a different experience for you, considering the perspective or the
I wanted to do
point.
more. I was like, this is it. I'm like, I'm grateful. Yay, I'm on TV. I finally got a job.
Yeah.
I can take a break from backup dancing, but, you're kind of always back to square one with those little jobs,
But then you get a big role on Vampire Diaries. We think about pop culture moving forward.
Right.
Again, you've always been in the forefront.
Right.
You played, obviously, Bonnie. And... tell me about that experience, because it was when the show was on, people had their comments, but then obviously over time where we start talking more about
Gen
black
Z.
black characters
Gen
on
Z
show,
came in and said, no.
Yeah.
This is what it is.